Right now is the worst time in history to buy a car. And I'm a used car dealer. Right now, I don't even want you to buy a car from me. Strikes are going on, but inventory is still stacking up. So much is going on in the car market right now, and you need to know about it. What are we seeing? Well, we're seeing this right here, and I'm seeing it at all of these dealerships. They are stacking inventory, especially at the big three. There are tons and tons of trucks sitting everywhere. But even if you go to places like Toyota, Honda, OEMs that have actually had trouble with production, you can actually go to a lot of their dealerships now, and they're starting to get inventory. They're not filled. They don't look like Ford dealerships, but they actually have some cars. You can go and find a 4Runner now. You can go and find some Camrys. You can go to a lot of these dealerships. You can find Accords. You can find the Civics, and you haven't been able to do that. And that's telling me that there's two things. One, Honda, Toyota, they're actually able to get some production out. The supply chain issues that they've been talking about for quarters, those are starting to ease a little bit for them. That's pushing more inventory into the system. And two, less people are buying them, because if they're able to actually get inventory that they can sit on their lots and it's just not being snatched up just like that, then the demand is going down. Things are getting worse and worse and worse in the car market. So now, what are we seeing on the mid-tier and the lower tier of the wholesale market, right? We're still seeing a downtrend. All the vehicles that we've been purchasing, we're not paying any more for them. We're actually getting a little bit better deals than what we had about a month ago. And that's really showing, I think, the weakness in this market, because even though that the strikes are going through the system right now and the upper end of these vehicles are getting popped, the lower end is staying stagnant to down at best. And it's because that there's no demand from these dealers, because a lot of these dealers are not selling vehicles right now. There's just not enough money in the system. Dealers aren't moving metal, so they're not going to auction to buy them. And that's why we're seeing this weird time frame right now where, you know what, you can go to an auction as a dealer and it seems like we can get deals, but there's still a lot of fright in the market that prices are going to spike. And if that's the case, usually like right around tax time, where dealers feel that kind of fright, prices go bananas at these auctions, and they're not doing it right now. And that worries me for the car market, because that tells me that there are a lot of dealers that are not in good shape right now. They can't afford to go buy cars, or they just don't have the capacity for it, whether it be their credit or lot constraint, where they can't just buy cars because they literally have no spaces. Their lots are filled. And if we keep this downtrend on those type of cars, then that's real bad news for a lot of these dealers going forward. And you might start seeing a lot of them actually have to shut their doors if they continue just not selling vehicles. And I know that a lot of these dealers are slow, because I talk to them on a weekly basis, and they cite all the same things. They can't get their customers into loans, and that's the biggest thing that's going to move this market. If customers cannot get approved to buy these vehicles, they don't have the cash to pay for a lot of these cars. They have to get loans on them, and if the banks aren't approving them, or if they aren't qualified to actually buy these cars, then you know what, these dealers, they're not going to sell them. So now these strikes, they've been going on for about a month now, and what are we seeing? We're seeing that we're kind of in a standstill period right now. We were making progress. It looked like the OEMs and the UAW were getting a little bit closer, and then Ford said, you know what, we're tapped out. We can't give anymore. We're even stretching to give you the offer that we're giving you right now. So the UAW hit Ford's largest plant. And I really think at this point that the OEMs are pretty much tapped out on what they can offer to the UAW. So I really think at this point that it's in the hands of the UAW to determine how long the strike is going to last. And it really looks at this point like they're just going to dig their heels in. So there's really no end in sight as far as what I can see. I think these strikes are going to last for a very, very long time. And here's the reason. Because these strikes, they really aren't affecting the inventory levels of these OEMs right now. And I really still believe that these OEMs, they want these strikes to occur, because there's production cuts that need to happen, that needed to happen well before the strikes even happened. And now they're getting them. They're getting this relief so they can keep these vehicle prices higher. And now they don't have to blame it on demand. They can blame it on the strikes. So I really think they're welcoming these strikes. The OEMs are going to dig their heels in, and also I think the UAW is going to dig their heels in. It's going to take a very, very long time for these things to get sorted out and for them to meet somewhere in the middle, because I think they're going to have to meet closer to the OEM side to actually get a deal done anytime soon. And you can go to just about any one of these dealerships, these big 3 dealerships across the country, and you can see that they're actually pretty well loaded with vehicles. Yeah, so I'm wanting to buy this F-150. I want to see how much it was. Yeah, that's great, because our prices are more than fair. Okay, well, what does that mean? Well, we take a fair price and then we just charge more. Oh, that seems fair? More than fair. So it's going to take a significant walkout. It's going to take a significant amount of time for these dealers to actually start feeling some pain. And we know that these OEMs also just came off some record profit years. So I really think that the UAW is going to have to do a lot of damage in the form of a lot more walkouts and making this strike last for a very long time to cause the OEMs any amount of inventory damage. And in my opinion, I think all the strikes are doing is actually helping these companies. What is hurting these companies and hurting the whole car market in general is just the economy. The interest rates and inflation are the biggest problem that we're facing right now, and it's making it so people just can't buy these vehicles. So even with these strikes going on, inventory is not going to take a significant hit because people are just not buying these trucks. So now there are only really 2 places in the car market right now where the prices are actually going up. The first one is on the higher end used vehicles. And when I say higher end, I mean the 1 to 2 year old, low mileage, nice used vehicles. The reason that those are going up and they're getting popped right now is because a lot of these franchise dealers, they're actually worried about the strike going on a lot longer. So what they've been doing is buying up a lot of these newer used vehicles because they're worried about replacing these cars if the strike goes on for a very, very, very long time. And as we know, there's already a big shortage of quality 1 to 2 year old used vehicles because a lot of people are not trading in and upgrading to the new car every 2 years anymore because prices are just so unaffordable. And we're not seeing this pop the wholesale data yet because it really just hasn't trickled down yet. I know a lot of the guys that I know that buy a lot of this stuff that have used car dealerships themselves, they're saying that they're missing cars now by like $2,000 and $3,000. Cars that they weren't missing at the auction a month ago, now they're missing them because these big dealers are coming in and buying a lot of their stock. So my worry is what this could eventually do is actually just have a trickle down effect where those guys now, you know what, they're priced out. They can't buy this more expensive stuff because these franchise dealers will pay way more than they can. So they have to drop down to the mid tier. That's going to make the mid tier stuff pop. And then those guys can't afford the mid tier stuff anymore. So they're going to drop down to the lower end stuff. And that's the kind of cars that I buy. So that's what I worry, but it's going to take a long time. It's going to take these strikes going on for a very, very long time for it actually to filter through the whole wholesale market. And the second place where we're actually seeing a pop in prices is parts. And there's no trickle down anything on this. Parts have just spiked. And the reason being is because of the strikes. And there's a lot of these big franchise dealers that have been worried that they weren't going to be able to get in the parts that they needed. So they over-ordered, they overstacked. And I'm assuming that a lot of these parts houses, these AutoZones, these Advanced Auto Parts, O'Reilly's, they have all been doing the same thing too, because people are going to have to fix their cars. Whether or not they're buying because they can't afford it, they're still going to have to fix their cars to get on the road to go to work. So car parts are a necessity, and they're going to have to continue to move through the system. And I think this is going to be a big problem going forward as the strikes are prolonged, because people need parts. They're going to continue to go up. Shops need parts, and if they can't get them, then the price just has to go up and up and up and up. So Ford and GM will actually be releasing their earnings pretty soon, and I think that their sales numbers are not going to come in too bad. And there are 2 reasons for that. And one are all of these vehicles right here. These are all fleet vehicles. And something that's really bolstered Ford and GM's numbers over the last few quarters have been the fleet sales. And I don't think that's going to stop anytime soon. And the reason for that is because there's been a lot of pull forward in demand from a lot of companies that have gone without vehicles, and now they're stocking back up. So what do I mean by that? So we went through this time period where a lot of these companies couldn't get any vehicles. So So they had to actually make their fleets stretch a little bit longer. And that's why we're seeing this massive spike in fleet sales, because they have to restock. They have to refill their fleets to be able to operate. But here's the problem with that. We have a lot of these companies, these government agencies, these rental car companies that are actually beginning right now a new cycle on the fleets that they're actually purchasing. So you're getting this pull forward in demand for these fleet sales right now, but that's going to wane as all these companies get filled back up with these fleet vehicles. All right, check this out. Mavericks, 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 Mavericks everywhere. That's why the public can't get them, is because they're holding them all and getting them all for fleet sales. So here's another problem with a lot of these fleet sales is over these last few years, these companies have now figured out that they can actually push a lot of these vehicles farther than they thought they could. And a great example of that is all these rental car companies. What we're seeing now coming back into the system is that a lot of these rentals that are coming up through auction, that are being resold to the public, they have a lot more miles because these rental car companies push these cars longer. They're finding out that they can push them longer, and that makes them a lot more money, where they can have a longer lifespan on these rental cars. Here's something I've never seen. This is a fleet Ford Lightning. I want to know what kind of company is actually ordering Ford Lightnings for their fleets. And because these companies have figured this out, this is actually bad news for these OEMs, because that means a lot of these companies that are ordering a lot of these fleet vehicles, a lot of these mass vehicles that they're going to make last longer, that means that these life cycles on these fleet vehicles that they're ordering are going to last longer, meaning that they're going to order less frequently. And because we've seen so much pull forward in demand, I think in the near future, we're going to see a big drop off in a lot of these fleet orders and a lot of these fleet sales that are actually coming through these OEMs. And a fleet Ford Lightning is $63,540. There you go, there's more of them. There's two more fleet Lightnings. There's another one right there, and there are two more over there. So yeah, I guess there are some companies that want to use the Lightnings for their work vehicles. You can't haul for very long, you can't tow for very long. Yeah, let's put them to work. And the second reason why Ford and GM's earnings won't be terrible is because of this right here. There's tons of inventory at all of these dealers' lots, and what happened was there was a massive pull forward in demand from a lot of these dealers because they were worried about these strikes coming into the system, so they didn't turn away any of these allocations when clearly a lot of these dealers actually needed to, because they're worried about not getting inventory. So Ford, GM, Stellantis, all these big three were able to actually channel stuff a lot of these dealers. They were actually able to push a lot of production to a lot of these dealers that didn't need it, and these dealers needed to say no to these allocations, but they were scared. Ford, GM, Stellantis, they needed to limit production, but they knew that the UAW was going to strike, and they knew that these strikes were going to last a long time, because you know what, the big three are really not willing to give them what they want. So because of this, the big three, they pushed out a lot of cars. They're okay with these strikes happening. They're okay with the delay in production happening right now because they were able to load up all of these dealers. And all of this load up was able to happen in the last quarter, and these earnings are going to actually reflect that. So don't think that there's going to be some massive crush in the sales, because the fleet sales are going to be up still, and a lot of this pull forward in demand from a lot of these dealers, not stopping a lot of the allocations, filling up these massive lots with F-150s that they can't sell. We're not going to see that in the numbers yet, because they were planning for all of this to happen. So here's one big thing too. So since interest rates have gone up, obviously that pulls the demand down. But what it also means is that the interest that dealers have to pay on their floor lines, they have to pay on their lines of credit, also goes up. So that means that these dealers are actually holding on to cars for longer, paying more interest than they regularly would, and then paying a higher amount of interest that they would have to pay on these vehicles that are sitting. So it's really a triple-edged sword. That is that even a saying? Whatever. There's three bad things that are happening to car dealers right now, because they're not selling vehicles in a timely manner. They're having to pay more interest because these vehicles are sitting for longer, and then the interest rates that they're actually having to pay on these vehicles are much higher than what they have been. So a lot of you probably don't realize this, but we actually started a second channel where I go and talk to a lot of car market insiders. I've got a video on there with some auction owners. I've got a video on there with another car dealer. I've got a video on there that I just recently did with a Subaru car salesman that also has a YouTube channel. His name's Alex. So I'll put a link in the description below so you can go check those out. But it's called CQA Live. And if you could do me a favor, go over there, subscribe to it. It would really, really help me out. Checking the mic. Check, check, check. Too bad. Nope. I was not looking at the lens. Nope. To buy a car. Nope. I just did something weird. Sales. Nope.